Musiker-Board of Germany. I'm together with Lenny at the PRS Hospital. This is where all the guitars end up, where customers ran into problems. You're going out on tour with the team as well to talk in shops about solving problems with PRS guitars. And so since I couldn't bring mine from Germany, we're doing a virtual repair on my own PRS 24, where I put a picture of it in the video at this point. And the problem I have at the moment is that I've got 5 strings ringing pretty good, and I've got an A string that stops ringing earlier than any other string. In Germany we tried to do a setup on that, but it never really solved that problem. So if there is a hint on what to look for to get closer to having 6 strings ringing, and to separate myself from a bass player as well by having 6 functioning strings, not just 5, perhaps there's a hint for you can give me.
There's actually 2 different things to look at. Number one is the height of the string on the first fret, or how it rests above the first fret. Yeah. The second and most important thing is how the nut slot itself is cut. What's the configuration of it? The nut slot should, we'll take it from here. We have the angle of the headstock, and you're looking at the slot of that nut should, let me grab a nut file, should cut that angle in half for 90% of the cut. And then the last 2 or 3 pushes, last 2 or 3 cycles, you're going to angle it out so it's only 2 or 3 degrees above the lie of the string on the neck.
Okay.
That way.
Are we talking about this side is the higher side?
Yep, correct. Okay. Because if you cut it too flat, then the string is going to sit in there, and maybe the slot was too wide to begin with, and it could rattle inside there and it would decay too fast. If it's cut on too steep of an angle, it's going to break well. It'll probably sound okay, but it's going to wear faster. Okay. So you're breaking that angle in half, and then slowly the last 2 or 3 strokes, angling it out. But never completely flat, but maybe 2 or 3 degrees flat.
Alrighty.
Now, a quick repair that you could do is if it's cut too low and you can't replace the nut exactly at that moment, you could do a little fill with super glue and perhaps baking soda. We have some dust that we use from the nuts. That could be filled in. It's not recommended, but in an emergency situation, it would build up the slot, and then you could recut that slot. Okay. The other thing to look at also is that if the guitar's been around for a while and you've been playing it for a while, there could be some wear down on the saddle itself. If you only hear that string dying off or decaying too fast when it's an open string, and when you're fretting it, it's fine, there's no problem. If it's decaying too quickly all of the time, no matter where you play, then the problem would be at the saddle.
Okay.
Good. One other thing to look at is if the nut itself was not glued on properly, or if it had been replaced and wasn't glued properly and wasn't really secure, that the resonant frequency of that A string could be vibrating that nut, and all the energy is decaying too quickly. So the nut has to be glued on very securely. That's 90% of a good setup.
Okay. Yeah, that resonating thing, I had that as well. I have an acoustic Gibson J45, and at some point all my A's were rattling in the guitar. And I thought it's going to be fret whatsoever, looked at the setup, and a little later I found out that the A on the E string, the played A on the E string, is rattling as much as the open A string, as much as any other A I had. Right. So from that point I knew it's going to be the frequency that makes it do the damage, and not an individual string. And I looked inside the body and I found loose wiring of the pickups in there, and that just responded to the A, to nothing else.
Exactly. Yeah, that happens frequently. Sometimes you actually have to retune the top by shaving a brace or 2 or adding a little bit of weight to change that frequency response. But it's better if you can just move the wire out of the way.
Yeah, it's easier. What else to look at if somebody's looking at his guitar and trying to do an optical check if everything is in place and where it should be?
Well, what you want to check for the proper height, the way we do it here at the factory is we measure the high E string, or the number 1 string, should be at approximately 17 to 18 thousandths of an inch off the first fret.
Okay.
And then it increases 18 to 19 thousandths. On the D string, will go up to 22 thousandths, 23, 24 thousandths.
Okay.
Give or take 2 or 3 thousandths in either direction. That way it's still comfortable, it's still high enough to have plenty of wear time, and it's going to ring a lot truer. Because if you move it down too low, it's very comfortable to play, but the open strings aren't going to have the same voice.
Yeah, it's PRS are always, from my experience, pretty good in how low you can get and still have the full ring of that.
Right. Well,
if you look at a worker's man guitar like a Stratocaster, you're pretty fast in string heights that high, but it's worth because you get the tone you want to.
Right.
It starts to explode more or less.
One of the reasons you can have the lower setup is because our necks are extremely straight, that the fretwork is top notch, and because it's so straight, and we set the relief. If you hit the very first fret and the last fret,
Okay.
at this point when I move my little finger, we're looking at maybe 2 or 3 thousandths of an inch relief at that point.
Okay.
So that's almost straight.
Yeah.
Because of that, you're not going to, and because of the fretwork, you're not going to have any buzzes or odd resonances, so you can lower the action a lot lower than some guitars.
Anything else to look for when the customer is able to do maintenance, like lacquer, towel cleaning, whatsoever, main fretboards?
Yep. What we use, and let me get a clean towel. This is a microfiber cloth. We sell them through PRS, and they're also available at auto shops, any place that does paints or finish type work. And a good cleaner, just a daily cleaner, you could actually use a spritz of water. The PRS cleaner will work much better because it'll give a PRS shine to your guitar no matter how old it is. Also, when you're changing strings, that's a good time to do a little bit of maintenance on the fingerboard itself. You can use a fingerboard oil. I just happen to use a fretboard conditioner that we use. You also want to go over the frets a little bit. I'll take a sheet of 1000 grit sandpaper, wet or dry abrasive, and a block of wood that's been machined flat, and I'll go over the frets just very lightly in this direction, so there's no grab, there's no gritty feel to the frets. Really cleans them up. And then I'll go over top of that either with steel wool or with a microfine. Let me see if here we go. Little 3M sanding pads. I'll cut them down to about a 1-inch square and go over the individual frets and then oil it up. The other thing you want to look for at the 12th fret is we're looking at about 2 30-seconds height on the high E side to 2.5 30-seconds. I set this one just a little bit lower for an artist from a group called the Family Force 5. And we're looking at the 12th fret on the high E string, so that the high E string cuts through that 2 30-second line. On the low E string, you can just see a little bit of space above that. So that's a pretty low setup. On the pickups, this is a very powerful Tremonti pickup. A lot of high output. I set that at, when we measure these, we push down on the last fret so we have an equal measurement on both sides. The pickups we normally set at about 2.5 to 3 30-seconds on the bass side.
You measure it to the housing or to the pole?
I measure it just from the middle of the pickup. You can measure it to the pole. Poles are sticking up a little bit more, but then you're sort of seasoning to taste. Raise it a little bit more, you're going to have higher output. Lower it a little bit more, you're going to have a cleaner output. But because this treble pickup is very powerful, and I matched it with a 5909 in the neck, I'm going to raise the 5909 almost to the point where it's touching that string, so it balances the output. And then you're looking at things as intonation. What a lot of people don't do, they'll intonate a guitar on the 12th fret, they'll check the open string, then check the 12th fret. Go ahead then, check it. Don't worry about the harmonic, because you're rarely ever playing the harmonic. The fretted string is where the action's at.
Yeah.
Go ahead and check your 15th and 17th frets and see if there's any difference. Because frequently you're going to have to flatten or lengthen the string adequately to that way it plays in tune a little bit sweeter than just checking the 12th fret.
Yeah.
So there's a little trade secret for you.
So thank you for the short inside view
You're
of how to maintain the value of your PRS. And of course, all of us hope, you don't have to help us, that our guitars stay alive as long as possible. But if necessary, it's very good to know there is help.
This is where you come for repairs.
Thank you. See you in the next part.